12 times. That's how many times I sat down, built a budget, and abandoned it within a month. 12. I used to think that number said something about me, that I was undisciplined, that I lacked the willpower other people apparently had. Then I looked at the actual math I'd been using every single time, and I realized the problem was never me. It was the spreadsheet. Budgeting isn't about deprivation, whatever your feed has told you. It's about finding the exact margin between the life you're living today and the version of it where one bad week wrecks everything. Today, I'm walking through the system that finally worked and why your last 12 attempts weren't your fault either. Open any finance channel and you'll get the same 3 suggestions. Cut the coffee, sell the car, eat rice and beans until your soul leaves your body. And look, if that works for you, genuinely, keep doing it. But for most people, that's not a system. That's a punishment with a due date. You white-knuckle it for 2 weeks, you feel like you're missing out on your own life, you burn out, and you quit. Then you tell yourself you failed at budgeting, when really, the budget failed you. That cycle, restrict, resent, rebel, repeat, is exactly what kept me stuck for years. It's not a willpower problem, it's a design problem. Here's the part that took me embarrassingly long to notice. Every single one of my 12 attempts started the same way. I copied someone else's template, a YouTuber spreadsheet, an app's default categories, a percentage rule that worked great for whoever invented it and had nothing to do with my rent, my city, or my life. I was trying to run someone else's operating system on my own hardware and then wondering why it kept crashing. None of those templates was wrong exactly, they just weren't mine. So, we're reframing the whole thing. Forget cutting costs as the starting point. What we're actually hunting for is your margin, the buffer between what comes in and what it costs you to survive. The margin is the thing standing between a surprise car repair and a full-blown financial spiral. Most budgets never define it. Mine finally did. The system that's stuck is built on 3 pillars. Pillar 1 is the safety-first allocation. Here's the mistake almost everyone makes, including me for years. Pay the bills, buy what you need, and save whatever happens to be left at the end of the month. That whatever's left number is usually 0, or close enough to it that it doesn't matter. Look, you're not bad with money, you're just last in line for your own money. So we flip the order entirely. The margin gets paid first before a single discretionary dollar goes anywhere else. This isn't about being stingy, it's about being strategic. You're treating your own financial safety like a fixed bill, the same way you'd treat rent. Because if you don't, it never gets paid. This idea has a name in the finance world. Some people call it pay yourself first, others call it reverse budgeting, and the mechanism is simple. When the savings transfer happens automatically before you see the money, your spending adjusts to what's left instead of the other way around. It sounds almost too simple to work. It's also one of the only budgeting habits that actually holds up when life gets messy, because it doesn't depend on you remembering to be disciplined at 9 p.m. after a long day. The system does the discipline for you. I want to sit on that for a second, because it's the whole hinge the rest of this hangs on. Willpower is a finite resource. It's highest in the morning and lowest at night, which is exactly when most of us make our worst financial decisions. The 11 p.m. online order, the I deserve this takeout run after a bad day. A budget that depends on willpower is a budget that's betting against you at the exact moments you're most likely to lose. Automating the margin removes the bet entirely. You don't have to win the willpower fight if the money's already gone before the fight starts. Pillar 2 is the margin rule itself. Your margin isn't your total income minus your total spending. That's just what's left over. And leftover is exactly the trap we're escaping. Your margin is a number you decide on in advance based on your actual survival costs. We'll get into how you calculate it in a second, but the key shift is this. The margin is not flexible. Everything else in your budget can flex around it. Groceries can flex, entertainment can flex. The margin does not flex, because the margin is the thing that keeps a $400 car repair from becoming a credit card balance you're still carrying 18 months later. Think about what actually derails most people financially. It's rarely one giant catastrophe. It's a string of ordinary, boring $500 problems. A transmission, a dental crown, a security deposit on a new apartment, hitting a bank account that was never designed to absorb them. The margin isn't glamorous. It's not going to make you rich by itself. What it does is make you unshakable when the ordinary $500 problem shows up, which it will, probably sooner than you think. Pillar 3 is the psychology buffer, and this is the piece almost nobody talks about, which is probably why so many budgets, including my first 11, collapsed. Well, a budget that assumes you'll behave perfectly every day for 30 days straight isn't a real budget. It's a fantasy with a due date. Real life includes a birthday dinner you didn't plan for. It includes the day you're exhausted and order takeout instead of cooking. The psychology buffer is a small, deliberate cushion inside your spending categories that absorbs those moments without blowing up the whole system. When my old budgets had zero room for being human, one bad Tuesday would tank the entire month, and I'd think, well, I already messed it up, might as well keep spending. That single moment of might as well is what killed budgets 9 through 11. The buffer exists specifically to stop that thought before it starts. There's actual behavioral logic behind why this works, and it's worth naming. An all-or-nothing budget makes a single slip feel like total failure. And once something feels like total failure, there's no reason left to hold back. A budget with a built-in margin for error makes a slip just a slip. Expected, accounted for, not a verdict on your character. That one design choice is the difference between a bad Tuesday and a blown month. Let me make this concrete, because abstract systems are easy to nod along to and hard to actually use. Take someone I'll call Daniela, mid-30s, take-home pay around $4,200 a month, and a budgeting history that looked a lot like mine. Multiple apps downloaded and abandoned, a spreadsheet she opened twice and never touched again. Every attempt started the same way. List the bills, guess at the rest, and hope for the best. When Daniela switched to this system, the first thing she did was calculate her true survival number. Not her income, not her ideal spending, but the actual bare minimum cost of keeping her life running. Rent, utilities, minimum debt payments, groceries at a realistic, not idealized level, transportation. For her, that number landed around $2,600. That gap between $4,200 and $2,600, that $1,600, was her margin zone. Not extra money, not fun money, margin. Old Daniela would have let that $1,600 get absorbed slowly through the month, a little here, a little there, gone by the 25th with nothing to show for it. New Daniela allocated $500 of it straight into her safety first fund the day her paycheck landed, before she saw the rest of the money in her checking account. Another chunk went to a psychology buffer inside her discretionary categories, so the inevitable bad Tuesday wouldn't derail everything. The remainder was hers to spend, guilt-free, because it had already been decided in advance rather than negotiated with herself in the checkout line. 4 months in, she had her first real emergency fund, not from cutting lattes, but from refusing to let her margin sit unprotected. And when her car needed a $380 repair in month 5, she didn't touch a credit card. It came out of the fund that existed specifically because it was paid first, not last. What changed? What made the difference for Daniela wasn't that she suddenly became a more disciplined person in month 4 than she was in month 1. She didn't. What changed is that the system stopped requiring her to be disciplined in the first place. The transfer happened whether she was motivated that day or not. That's the entire point. I'll also give you the version of this that doesn't have a neat, predictable paycheck, because a lot of people watching this don't get the same number every 2 weeks. If your income is irregular, freelance, commission, tips, gig work, the margin rule still works. It just anchors to a percentage instead of a flat dollar amount. Instead of $500 every payday, it becomes 12% of whatever comes in the day it lands. Some months that's a small number, some months it's a large one. Either way, the order of operations never changes. Margin first, spending second. The system flexes with your income without ever compromising on the sequence. I know what some of you are thinking because I thought it too. I don't make enough for a margin. There's nothing left to protect. I want to push back on that gently. In almost every case I've walked through with people, the issue wasn't that the margin didn't exist, it was that it was being spent in 100 small, invisible ways before anyone sat down to name it. A forgotten subscription, a grocery habit that's crept up without anyone noticing, a just this once that happens 4 times a week. The margin is very often there, it's just unclaimed. And even if your real number is small, even if it's $40 a paycheck to start, the sequence matters more than the size. Margin first, spending second at any dollar amount is a completely different financial life than spending first and hoping something's left.
The other objection I hear a lot? This just sounds like the 50-30-20 rule with new names. It's related, but it's not the same thing, and the difference matters. Percentage rules like 50-30-20 assume everyone's situation compresses into the same ratios regardless of where they live or what they earn. Someone with a $900 rent and someone with a $2,400 rent do not have the same needs percentage, and forcing both of them into the same formula is exactly the kind of borrowed template that sank my first several attempts. The margin rule starts from your actual survival number, not a preset ratio, which is why it holds up for people whose lives don't fit neatly into someone else's spreadsheet. If you're tired of get-rich-quick noise and actually want the math behind building real, boring, durable wealth, hit subscribe. This channel is for people playing the long game, not chasing a headline. Here's how you apply this today in about 5 minutes. Step 1, stop looking at your total income. That number lies to you. It makes everything feel more available than it is. Instead, calculate your survival number. Add up rent or mortgage, utilities, minimum debt payments, insurance, and a realistic grocery number. Not the number you wish groceries cost, the number they actually cost you last month. Pull it from your bank statement if you have to. Step 2, subtract that survival number from your take-home pay. What's left is your margin zone. Not extra, not fun money, margin. This is the number that used to just evaporate for me every single month without me ever noticing where it went. Step 3, pick a percentage of that margin. Even 20% is a real start, and set up an automatic transfer for the day your paycheck lands. Not a reminder to transfer it manually, automatic. The entire system leans on the fact that you can't spend money you never see. Step 4, build a small psychology buffer directly into 1 or 2 of your spending categories. Give yourself explicit permission, in writing, for 1 imperfect day. That single sentence, "This category has room for me to be human," is what separates a system that survives contact with real life from one that shatters the first time you're tired and order takeout. That's it. That's the whole action. Not a 12-tab spreadsheet, not an app you'll delete in 3 weeks. 1 number, 1 automatic transfer, 1 small permission slip. I want to be honest about the first 2 weeks, because I don't think it's fair to pretend this feels amazing immediately. The first transfer out of your account is going to feel tight. You'll look at your checking balance and it'll be smaller than you're used to seeing on that day, and some part of your brain is going to panic a little. That's normal. That's not the system failing, that's you adjusting to a number that was always your actual spending capacity, just one you'd never confronted directly before. It gets easier by the second paycheck, and by the third, the smaller number is just what normal looks like. In a few places, this tends to fall apart, so you can see them coming. The first is calculating your survival number based on an idealized version of your life, instead of your actual spending. If you lowball it, your margin becomes fake, and fake margin disappears the same way your old leftover money did. The second is skipping the automation step because you tell yourself you'll just remember to transfer it. You won't, not every month, not forever, and that's not a character flaw, that's just how attention works when life gets busy. The third is treating the psychology buffer as a loophole instead of a boundary. It's there to absorb 1 bad day, not to quietly become your whole discretionary budget again. The moment it does, you're back to attempt 13, looking a lot like attempts 1 through 12. There's a fourth trap too, one I fell into personally around attempt 8, treating the whole system as finished the day you set it up. It's not.
Your survival number changes when your rent goes up, when a subscription creeps in, when your life genuinely shifts. Revisit it every few months, not to overhaul everything, but to make sure the number you built the whole system around is still telling the truth. Let me walk you through what an actual first month tends to look like, because I think a lot of advice budgetal skips this part and jumps straight to the after picture. Week 1, you'll set your survival number and probably second guess it at least once, wondering if you've left yourself too little room, or worse, whether you've been too generous and the whole thing is fake. That's fine. Adjust it slightly if you need to, but don't scrap it. Week 2 is usually when the automatic transfer actually fires for the first time. And this is the moment I mentioned earlier when your checking balance looks smaller than you're used to. Sit with that discomfort instead of reversing the transfer. Week 3 is typically when the psychology buffer gets tested. Something unplanned comes up, you dip into it, and instead of that feeling like failure, it does exactly what it's designed to do: absorb the hit without touching your margin. By week 4, you're not thinking about the system anymore. It's just running in the background the way a good system should. That's the actual goal here, not perfection. Invisibility. A budget you have to think about constantly is a budget that's still fighting you. A budget that just quietly runs is one you've actually won. Here's what actually changed for me, past the 4th or 5th month of doing this. It wasn't just that I had money sitting in an account I hadn't had before, though that was real and it mattered. It was that I stopped feeling a low-grade dread every time an email showed up from my landlord or my mechanic texted about the appointment I'd been putting off. That dread had been sitting under almost every financial decision I made for years, quiet enough that I'd stopped noticing it was there at all, and it wasn't until it lifted that I realized how much of my energy it had been eating. 12 failed budgets weren't just 12 failed spreadsheets. They were 12 rounds of hoping this time I'd finally feel in control, and 12 rounds of that hope collapsing by week 3. This is the first system where the hope didn't collapse, because it was never asking me to be a different person than I actually am on a Tuesday night when I'm tired. You didn't fail 12 times because you're lazy or bad with money. You failed because every system you tried put your safety net last instead of first, and asked you to be a perfect unemotional robot for 30 straight days to work at all. This one doesn't ask that. It just asks for 5 minutes and one number. Implement the safety first allocation this week. Calculate your real survival number, automate the transfer, build in room to be human, and tell me in the comments what your margin actually looked like once you saw it written down. I'll see you in the next one.